Hey everybody, welcome to our sixth episode of Shaman and the Scribe. My name is Ali Kaden. I'm an author of thriller and esoteric fiction, and I'm here with my good friend Brendon.
Hey everyone, I'm Brendon. I'm a Reiki master, a spiritual consultant, and a shaman. And we're here today with very dear friend, Laurie Pearsall, who's a visual artist, an art educator, and a creativity coach. And thanks for joining us, Laurie.
Thank you both for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week, and I'm excited to see what comes up as we chat today. Thank you.
I was just going to say, it's really good to meet you, Laurie. You've been watching our podcast, and I was joking with you before that you're our biggest fan. So it's really cool to switch roles, and we get to have you and learn about you and hear all the things that you have to say about art and spirituality and the creative process and friendship.
Yeah, thank you. I guess it's like super fan bonus here. It didn't, it didn't take much more than, obviously this really beautiful connection I have with Brendon, but then the title of your podcast for me to start listening, because it just kind of says it all. It's like, sign me up. So I'm really excited to watch, your program and your offer evolve and reach more people. So anyway, I can support that. I'm keen.
Thank you. In our previous episodes, I think it's come across that I was originally a client of Brendon, and we've become really good friends, and now the lines blur as to what we're doing. It's friendship, it's work, it's raising consciousness, outside of the box, just wherever we can. But it'd be good to know how you guys know each other, and I think you guys have a long history together, and then reconnected recently. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Brendon, you want to start?
Yeah, well, let's see. I met you 20 years ago, right?
A little more than that. We parted ways 20 years ago.
Yes, so I met you like 23 years ago.
Yeah.
And you were my art teacher where we both grew up in Massachusetts. And you really inspired me to be completely myself as I am. And in the 20 years that we weren't in touch, I continued to hear whispers of your voice in my head, encouraging me to, express myself authentically and to use my creativity in every aspect of my life. It's really nice that we have this new reconnection.
Yeah, it's amazing for me as well, because periodically over the years I will come back into contact with a student, sometimes serendipitously, sometimes they'll reach out, seek me out, or we have this social media world, which I think is actually what brought you back on my radar. Was through Instagram, possibly a couple of years back. But for me, as a teacher, I've always felt like I was kind of a perpetual adolescent anyway. So I really, really love that particular age group. And I always felt like, although I was in a leadership position in the classroom, I was right there with you. Maybe it's, being an uber empath or something like that. But for me, to get up in the morning every day and connect with people like yourself, and it was a lot more than just learning how to mix color or how to shade an apple, whatever we might be doing. It was really always about the human connection and just walking along one's path with a student for a little while. And I had mentors who did that for me. And I was, pretty young when I started teaching, because I just knew that's what I wanted to do, because I thought, wow, if I can just accompany someone else on their path just for a little while, that's good. So to have you come back into my life, and it's just super cool, to see what you're doing and how you've evolved. And yeah, it's really beautiful. I feel really fortunate.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel so fortunate too. What was I like as a student?
That was going to be my question too.
Fortunately for you, I've had a lot of students, so some of the details have slipped through the cracks, so all is forgiven. Yeah, like the details don't really matter, like homework or all of that. For me, it was always the joy of like deciphering what you were about as a person through your work. So for example, your palette, your greens, your love of the forest and of nature. I remember you and I communicated, like our love language was reptiles or frogs, I think, or something. And
Yes.
we, I mean, what I remember, I don't know if it's about being a student, I just remember about our interactions. And keep in mind, folks, with a teacher, you know, you see a teacher how many hours a week? 5 days a week? And I had some students for 6 years straight, if I had them in middle school all the way up till graduation. Um, I mean, you really do start to connect and observe people. So, Brendon, I remember you and I finding a lot of like moments of oasis in the stress of just kind of, you know, academia and rules and regulations and passing exams and deadlines, but also personal stuff. I know, you know, as a young adult, I was going through things, and I know as a young man, you were as well. And I remember our laughter was our meeting point. And that was a place where we could use whatever project you were working on or anecdotes, and we could be kind of silly and funny together. And it was a way of connecting and talking about what we were excited about and what we were worried about in a subtext. I don't know if that's making sense to you guys, but as a teacher, you want to be really gentle and really careful about boundaries and relationships with students. But on the other hand, you want to connect. How do I expect someone to be creative in my presence if we're all going to be fake? Doesn't make any sense.
It sounds like you are willing to see the real Brendon and step outside of protocol and prioritize the person over the student.
Did you feel that way, Brendon? Was that what you experienced?
Yes, very much so. Your room, like, it was a safe place for me growing up. I could really be my weird self with you, and just whether I was doing work in your room or just sitting in there with you, it was a place for me to grow, reflect, sometimes just laugh with you about things and to connect. I'm remembering that one time we had this still life to make, and you were like, go into our closet and take, you know, like whatever is in there you can use for your still life. So I like dug deep and I grabbed these beautiful red curtains that you apparently had just bought for your house. And I cut them up and made a still life out of them. Yeah. And you were so nice to me about it, even though you were kind of devastated about your beautiful curtains.
Hey, that's a risk of bringing personal stuff into the classroom.
Right.
My art room has always been like an extension of my home. You know, my home studio, whatever didn't fit in there, it would kind of migrate over into my classroom. But what you said was about space, and it's creating space, you know, and I've been in the space that you're sitting in now, you know, and so a classroom, whether it's a classroom or, you know, your writing nook, Ali, or, you know, where you work your magic, your counseling, Brendon, I think creating a space, whether it's physical and atmospheric, is super important. So for me, that was almost more important than don't arrive after the bell or make sure you have a pass. You know, all of that was kind of weird, like you said, Ali, protocols. And for me, it was like when people cross this threshold, they have to feel like they're okay. They don't have to feel fantastic every day, because that's a lot to ask when you're an adolescent.
Yeah.
But they have to feel like, okay, all right, we're here to make some stuff. Let's make things together. It's demanding, but you know, we come in peace. Like that was always kind of, and to this day, whether I'm coaching or whether I'm working with a big group of people, I want them to feel something shifts when they walk through the threshold of my classroom or wherever I'm working. I think creating that space is really important.
I love that. I spent some time in addiction recovery rooms, and they have a saying that people say a lot. I feel like I was born without the rule book to life. You know, it's like everybody else got this manual on how to behave and how to talk and how to be. And I never got that rule book. And so I'm operating in society in doing the best I can, but I'm not sure, am I saying the right things? Am I doing the right things? Am I taking enough interest in others or too much interest in others? And that's why I went back to Brendon, because that's what he taught me is what to do with myself. He created a space where I could exist as me. and let me be me. And in doing that, taught me how to let others be themselves. And so before, when I would interact with somebody, I would be thinking while I'm interacting, like, should I say this? Should I not say this? And I've learned to let go of that and just allow somebody's being to imprint on me the way it is, and then vice versa for my true self to come across the way it is, without tweaking it to meet perceived societal expectations. So that safe place is a very important idea to me.
Well,
You
and
can
you're,
thank Laurie for that.
are we playing telephone or something?
Yeah.
Pass the baton. Well, and I have a lot of people I can thank for it as well. I think that's the beauty, though, is Ali, like when you're comfortable in your own essence and your bones and your meat suit, whatever you kind of bring to any situation, then you're creating that same space for someone else. So it's about presence.
Right.
And inclusivity and non-judgmental. For me, that was as important as a student as it is, and continues to be as a teacher. Yeah, it's just not fair to set up some imaginary parameters and expect people to jump through hoops. Like you said, where's the manual?
Yeah.
A lot of people think there's a manual, but that's a conspiracy theory. I'm concerned.
And I love that you said you feel like a perpetual adolescent. I relate to that very much. One version of me is permanently 15 years old. And there's another version of me that's much younger, that's maybe a 9-year-old. And people see that when they interact with me. There's a little boy energy that comes out. And the older I get, the less appropriate it would seem in society. But that's the real me. And I think it's important for us to let that shine. My daughter is going to be 6 in January, and I learned from her because she has just a complete curiosity and fascination with everything all the time, a joyful fascination with things. And I think we're born that way, and society trains us to let go of that wonder. I remember when I was a kid, I asked my dad, "Can we go for a walk together?" And he said, "It's raining." And that didn't make sense. Like we can't go because it's raining. And I said, "So what?" And he said, "We'll get wet." And I said, "So what?" Because my mind had not internalized the idea of being wet as something that's not desirable.
Yeah.
If I'm
Or
wearing
why is rain bad?
exactly, and
Empirically not true, actually. It's a good thing. Well, there's a difference between being childish and childlike, and I mean, some of my first and most potent spiritual and transcendent experiences were at age 5, at age 7, also when I was in adolescence. And I'm in my mid-50s now, and it's nothing short of another adolescence. It's such a huge time of revolution in one's life, if you let it be, if you welcome the dismantling, because it's a very similar dismantling, in my humble opinion, to adolescence. Because in adolescence, you're thinking, wait, okay, I was a child and things are reliable and they're this way, even if they're not great things. We rely on the good and the bad, these patterns that we've seen so far. And then you suddenly realize you're going to get blown out into the world, or kicked out, depending, on your circumstances. And suddenly it's like, yay, I'm free. I'm free. It's really scary and exciting at once. And I think for me, I've taught all ages since forever, because I really just love working with the humans. I don't really care how old they are. But my special spot is adolescents. And it's because they're at a portal. And it's such an important time to just decide who they are. And it's one of the most difficult, but one of the most, what's the word I want, prescient moments where you can shed your skin and get away with it more easily, maybe, because there's less trappings of, houses and cars and families and mortgages and commitments and things like that. There's an opportunity there. And I like being part of that and helping people figure out what their next right step is. To this day, at 54, I feel like such that crazy little Laurie laying on the floor in my bedroom. My parents had removed the roof to redo the roof. So I grew up in the same town as Brendon, and this was in the 70s, and they were redoing the roof in my bedroom, and I wasn't supposed to go past all the plastic sheeting and the covered furniture because it was a construction area, so it was dangerous. But my bedroom was completely intact, except there was no roof, and it was a beautiful spring day, and the cherry tree was in fruit. And for me, it was my first experience with surrealism, but also just the expansion. I felt massive and tiny at the same time, like this giant hand could come down, like me playing in my dollhouse, and just come down and touch me. And I just laid down like a star on the wooden floor and just stared up at the ceiling and just received the world. And I don't want to forget that. I don't want to think that that was something silly, or even the word innocent. I mean, I understand innocence in the sense of purity, but not naivete. Because I remember I kept sneaking up there just so I could lay on the floor and receive the sky, and why would I want to unlearn something like that kind of wonder and curiosity, even if it was raining?
Yeah, the great spiritual teachers have the quality of childlikeness. There is absolutely some wisdom to that curiosity.
Like when I'm, talking to people about what I do in this kind of new integrated coaching that I'm doing, which is beyond being specifically an art and design teacher. I'm working with everyone, not only folks who want to become artists or become better, more skilled, I should say, artists. I work with everybody, but it's like I'm silly and soulful. Like, why can't I have both? What was it, Brendon, that we were saying? I had a ceremony with you in May, and we decided that I get to be the jester and the priestess.
Yes.
Why do I have to choose? Can I be both? Yes, I can be both.
Well, I love the idea that you expressed sitting in your room, that you were Laurie, you're the meat suit, but you're also everything. And I like to think of it as you're everything having a Laurie experience. And I'm curious, as a artist, as a coach, if you were to meet an adolescent that is struggling with identity, with self, how would you orient them to have their own experience of that? And then similarly, if I came to you, I'm 42, I'm writing fiction books, and I'm putting a lot of metaphysical and esoteric themes in them so that I can express my version of that, my spirituality. How would you work with those two individuals using your particular interest and skill set to strengthen their connection?
Fantastic question. And I use exactly the same methods. The only difference might be a little bit in my languaging, possibly. I'm pretty hip. I generally know what's going on. I'm very comfortable talking with a 4-year-old, a 14-year-old, or a 44-year-old. So maybe my ability to know my audience is relevant, but my methodology and my approach is the same. And the first is warmth, love, curiosity, and it just starting with kind of an inquiry. Like, hey, why are you here? Just letting that person feel safe first. That's always that kind of psychological and physiological safety that we mentioned before is critical. But then actually, it's really, I do a lot of inventory taking. So that would be through inquiry, through questions, some seemingly random questions. And then also, I like to see what people wear, what music they listen to, what books they read, what's on their scrolling habits, because it's like a scavenger hunt for me. My experience, I've always been good at it, but after so many decades, my kind of superpower is pattern detection. So I'm really good at working together kind of alongside someone to put all of these things that they don't think are related. It's like a mosaic, or a puzzle, and putting them all out on the table and then saying, well, do you realize that all of these things have exactly that particular hue of thylacine green, which is only found in this climate? I mean, it's crazy how consistent we are in our complexity even. And so if you're an art student, we're going to do that through portfolio development. If you're coming to me, maybe as someone in your position who's trying to integrate your home life with your bread and butter, professional business, with your creative purpose, we're gonna look at like a constellation, and you might see, a reindeer, and I'm going to see the Big Dipper, and then later we're both going to look together and we're going to see a different formation. So it's drawing from experience, past experiences, superficial things like tastes and sensory things. So I do a lot with, for example, I use meditation, so we do creative visualization, but we also use art materials, paint, collage. We do mark making in the dark to music. So I use sound. So I do a lot of kind of multi-sensory activities that then draw up all of this stimulation. And then suddenly the patterns just start appearing. And I'm really good at getting a student or a client to, I can model the habit of saying, oh, what do these things have in common? But really, once I do it once or twice, they realize everybody's capable of doing that. I had a client I was working with recently, and we were just doing a timed thing where she was just pulling stuff from a magazine. No thinking, just pull. We'd set a timer. And without realizing it, there were 5 horses that she pulled from all different sources. And she was like, I said, do you have a horse? No. Like, well, we need to talk about horses, honey. Because it so much came from that identification, because it wasn't, oh, I have a fantasy of becoming an equine coach, which maybe would be the answer for someone else. But for her, it was about rising up, the power, the force, the heat, the gentleness of this beast. The point of view when you're on top of a horse. It was about leadership unexplored. And suddenly this whole other conversation came out. And that doesn't happen if you just put a vase on the table and ask everyone to paint the same thing, with respect. I say that. So my methodology is very much drawing from the individuals and using all of these different kind of sensory things. And that's why it's not really important to me that it's about drawing or painting or sculpture skills. That's super fun, and I'm good at that. Great. But that's just a vehicle for the self discovery, really. So I essentially do the same thing for both people.
Laurie, can you describe your spirituality to us?
Oh, what a good question. So, well, as it should be, it's a journey, and it's always, I like to think of it as a process, because it's not like a library card. That was a thing, by the way. I don't know who our audience is, but back in the day, we'd get a library card and stick it in your wallet and forget about it forever. But you just had it when you needed it. Spirituality for me has never been like that. I've been a seeker my whole life, since I was a very, very small child. I knew that there was that big sky and there was a bigger picture. So my first experiences came through growing up in the countryside, smelling herbs, cracking rocks open to see what was inside. So growing up in Mother Nature was a huge teacher. I think my family and environment for that. The Catholic Church was part of my story. It was also a really difficult part of my story that was part of that skin that I had to shed. However, my experience of retreats and chanting and the laying on of the hands and the combination of scent, like aromatherapy and music joining together with praise and light coming through colored glass. There are things from my experience of growing up in a pretty strict religious home that are absolutely pieces of the puzzle that led me to just keep seeking, because I did reach those moments where I felt the micro and the macro all at once, at many different ages. So that means, just being this tiny little grain of sand, maybe in a frightened way, like, me, what am I doing here? And then also feeling like, whoa, no, there's a collective consciousness here. And I'm so proud to be one of the humans, you know. So vacillating between those feelings is something that kept me coming back for more. I lost my way for a fair amount of time at different points in my life. I also, you know, used substances and habits and people. Particularly, my favorite number or numbing agent is overwork, the process addiction and overwork, trying to calm a restlessness. And I think that restlessness is really the portal, it's the gateway. And I think most of us will have some kind of a relationship with restlessness, and restlessness is on a spectrum as well. You know, it can go all the way to depression and the desire for self-destruction, of course. So for me, when I was 27, I had just moved out of being a resident director at A Better Chance, which is a residence for young men from New York City. And so I was mothering 10 men, my partner, a chef, a tutor, and a whole bunch of young men between the age of 13 and 19. I like to take on a lot. And I was teaching full time the whole time. And so I was really exhausted. And my body was telling me I had lumps removed from my breasts. And I was just like, what is happening? Something needs to change. And that was when I moved to Ipswich and I saw a flyer for Kundalini yoga, and learning to sit still and listen was probably one of the most important things that anyone can do. And it was the most important thing for the reopening of my spiritual path. Like I said, I was for a stretch, I just was feeling a lot of letting that cynicism and that doubt kind of rule the day. So since then, in 2004, I received my certification and my training in Kundalini and meditation in the ashram outside of Boston. And I continue to teach and practice those things today. Yet, I mean, for me, spirituality, it's so ample, it's so expansive. I find it in my teaching. Creativity is really, it's just collaboration with the universe. So working with other people for me is a way for me to connect to my spirit and to the spirit. So it's been quite a journey. And I've had, you know, Brendon knows a little bit, you know, as we've been reconnecting and establishing our friendship in a new way. You know, I've had some pretty significant adversity, some near-death experiences. I've had a dark night of the soul that lasted, like, it was a little more than a night. I think we said it was a decade, maybe.
Yeah.
Dark decade of the soul. And it's not like I stepped off completely, but wow, Faith Under Fire is gorgeous. Once you rise up out of that fire again, it's quite an upgrade. So I'm really happy where I am right now in my spiritual journey, and having to humble myself on a really regular basis is part of that. Does that answer your question? It's kind of rambling, but it's ongoing and it stretches out in all directions, and it's been with me forever. So that's how I would describe it today.
No, that was
Yes, it does.
that was beautiful. Yeah. I relate to you so much. You know, I grew up in the Middle East, which is a religious place, and my family wasn't particularly religious or overly religious, but it's the environment. And I remember how I had a religion teacher teaching me about the Islamic religion when I was young, maybe 12 or 13. And we were talking about heaven and hell. And you said that religion was like, you know, putting that ID card in your wallet. And the way that I think of it is drawing a circle around yourself and saying only people who are in this circle are, you know, going to heaven or saved or whatever it is. And so that religion teacher said something to that effect in our lesson, and it hit me so hard. That is not the truth, you know, like that's just not it. You know, God is bigger, he's expansive, he's loving, he's in every person, every religion, every situation. And that mattered to me very much. And I knew it, but I couldn't put words on it until I went to an ashram in India and I was introduced to Eastern spirituality very similarly to what you were saying. And I learned to sit still, and you know, I learned to meditate. And in that process, I discovered that what I thought was me wasn't me, that me was something much larger, connected to something much larger, and that larger being was having an Ali experience, it was just trying out being, finite and mortal for a period of time because it's fun to play, and that changed my perspective entirely. And to go back to what you were saying about how you work with people and how you look at all their interests and what they might pull at random out of a series of objects, or what they see when they look at the stars and seeing the patterns. What I was thinking when you were talking about that is that everything is connected. And that's psychologically, the way we behave in our personalities. It's physically, if I have low self-esteem, maybe I hold my body in a certain way and I create lower back pain. Everything is connected. And then spiritually, every situation, every trial, every person that we meet, it's all connected and meant to be. And when we start to see those patterns, life opens up in a very beautiful way. And like you said, we find the light by traveling through the dark. I have this metaphor that I love to use, that if I had a flashlight and I was standing on the surface of the sun, my flashlight really wouldn't make much of a difference in anything, right? Like that light would just be engulfed by the, immense light of the sun. But if I'm underground in a dark cave, and we can't see anything, that flashlight is going to be extremely useful. That light will be the light that saves, the light that brings people back together. And so it's all connected, and when we
It's your lantern, I have one of my daily practices is meditation in the I Ching. And even in the darkest moments, it's just to make sure that flame in that internal lantern, that flame doesn't go out. You keep it close, and hold it tight. And even if you're in total darkness, if you wait long enough, it'll pass, because everything passes, even the good stuff.
Yep.
That's great.
How do you keep your flame lit?
Oh, great question. Well, one of the best things you can learn from, things getting shitty in life is priorities and ritual. I very much love ritual. So for me, no matter what's going on, to light a candle at the dinner table or to light a candle in the morning if I'm doing a meditation. So I do sit still. I do chant. I make sure I have contact with nature. And if I'm in a city setting or at the moment, but if I can't actually, touch my feet on the dirt or something like that, I'll just talk to another human, because, there's nature right there in front of you. So even if it's a challenging conversation, if I put myself in this kind of witness mode, I can just watch the humanity and watch the interaction going on. So it's staying in that childlike, observant, and receptive mode is the most important thing. So that practice for me takes a lot of forms. Making things is really important. Using these, I love these two things. Oh, I'm so happy that I have two of them. My grandfather who was an inventor, encouraged me to be ambidextrous when I was little. And so I was eating chopsticks with both hands and writing with my feet and doing all kinds of weird stuff when I was 10. And I'm not joking. I mean, I feel so fortunate that I have a body that I can use. And it's while I'm here on, walking the earth. That's my way of staying connected, is using the tools that I was given. And I always need a reminder to slow down, because I have like a bicycle. No, what do I have? I have a motorcycle brain with bicycle brakes. Because I'm really hungry. I love learning. I love doing things. I love making things. I love meeting up with people. So I've built in quiet time into every single day, because I just know that I need that stillness and time to just observe or breathe, and maybe not be consuming anything, liquids, music, social media, news, whatever. I don't watch news, for example. I mean, so there's a lot of things at this point in my journey. It's very much interwoven into how I spend my time, keeping that lantern lit. And when things are really dark, stop everything, sit your ass down. Even if
Close your mouth and breathe.
shut up and sit down and breathe. Even if it doesn't feel good, because you just have to trust. You're like, no, I've been here before. This too shall pass. I'm okay. I'm safe.
I love that you mentioned ritual. That's something that I learned from Brendon, just watching him operate in the way that he does. He's always lighting candles and incense and, creating an ambiance, a mood for the right energy to come in. And it's so funny because there was a time in my life where I was cut off from the light, cut off from awareness of the light, I should say. And so if I prayed, I wouldn't be on my knees. I wouldn't have my hands together. I would just, hey God, blah, blah, blah. That's it. I would pray with 0.01% of my being. I would use very little of this thing that I'm walking around in to express what I was trying to do. And I've learned, like you said, to use all of it, the way I hold my body, getting down on my knees to express a certain type of gratitude, or to sweeten the air with incense, or to light a candle, in remembrance of a person or a concept. That's changed my life. It's very powerful, and it's funny because in the world we live in, it's intangible. People don't often understand why people who are spiritual do that stuff. But when you do it, when you begin to express yourself with your whole being, and I think art is very similar, you have a very different experience of life. It stops being a chore and it starts feeling like a gift that you could never have imagined receiving.
Everyone has rituals. I mean, people come home and, throw back a beer and turn on the Netflix and eat dinner on a tray and not talk to their loved ones. That's a ritual.
Yeah.
Pick one. Which one is life-giving, which one is self-perpetuating. And, and I don't mean to sound nasty that way, because it's easy, to fall into patterns. So I say that because some folks sometimes will say, oh, well, it's okay for you because you're disciplined and you know how to do this. And it's like, hey, wait a minute, I made a choice, and every day we make choices, and you are empowered to make choices. We aren't just puppets,
Right.
or marionette being, bobbled around on the floor. You can make a choice. And I think this feeling that we're just all cogs in a wheel, and I get how it happens, but everyone has rituals. You just have to decide which ones create the circumstances where you feel safe, content, open, receptive. Those are the good ones.
Right. Connected.
Brendon, what's your favorite ritual?
Well, I love chanting, but I think it's really lighting a candle. Like, there's so much to that when you light a candle. It's lighting an external candle in front of you, and when it's lit, it reminds me that there is that flame within me that's lit in my heart, and it's my connection to. I'm getting like emotional talking about it. Like, it's my connection to the part of me that exists beyond time and space and is eternal, that keeps coming back into bodies. So I think lighting a candle is my favorite ritual.
And you and I chant Gayatri, which invokes the power of the sun. And there's a lot of spiritualities around the world that talk about the sun. How do you put the light of the sun into a spiritual context and into the context of ritual?
Well, chanting Gayatri, definitely. Anytime you chant that mantra, you're calling the light of the sun into each of your chakras and into your awareness to illuminate your intellect. The sun in our solar system, it's the cause of life on our planet, and was probably the cause of life on other planets in our solar system. It's the energy of love, and whatever created that sun is also that energy, and we can connect with that and bring it here onto Earth in our daily activities.
I've always loved the sun. I'm Egyptian, so we're sun worshippers in the sense that we love going to the beach and getting a tan. And that's what the sun was to me for a long time, until I really started chanting Gayatri seriously. And I find myself thinking about the sun, feeling grateful for the sun a lot. And like you said, it's the source of all life. It's the source of all color. We wouldn't see a single color on Earth, that nothing would be alive on Earth if it wasn't for the sun. And somehow there's this awareness that's been created in me through that practice of always being aware and grateful for the sun, regardless of where it is. It's summer, it's winter, it's sunrise, it's sunset. It is a giver of life. And Gayatri is about, for me, turning myself into a sun, turning myself into something that shines light in the darkness and is a giver of life and connects people and is stable and reliable and eternal. And it's so incredible how we could live underneath this ball of fire our whole lives. And, the only thing we think about is like sunscreen, and then we begin to have ritual, and that sun takes on a whole different meaning physically and spiritually as well.
Hey, I want to interject something. I'm curious to hear what both of you think. While you're speaking, it's just suddenly come to me that I'm really connected to lunar energy. Something about seeing in the dark. What do you think, Brendon? Is that surprising to you?
No, not at all. You're very lunar.
Yeah, and something about the ebb and the flow of the tides. That's why I think, Ali, when you were talking about the lantern and having that light, yeah, I'm the kind of person who would have a flashlight on the sun too, because I'm thinking it's going to get dark one of these days. It's like I'm always kind of ready for the shift, that we're going to get a full life, spiritually or physically, has everything. A full life has everything. It has darkness and light because it's what gives definition one to the other. But as you both were speaking, I thought, wow, I was the teenager who was reading Jane Eyre and went out at night and ran in barefoot in the rain in the woods in Oxford, Massachusetts, just because I wanted to, like, what does that feel like to be running around in the dark and getting completely wet with the rain and my feet in the mud? And there's something about that journeying and maybe taking some pretty big risks in my life. Some of them that have, all of them have ended up wonderfully, but not without, scars involved. I don't know. I'm just curious. What do you think about that? I don't think it's as simple as being female in body, but I don't know.
About, the lunar energy, it's the moon, like, it shines the light of the sun when it's gone, when it's out of our view.
So it's like the transmitter.
Yeah.
So maybe the teacher in me likes that.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's also the closest celestial body to us. It's our friend in the darkness.
Yeah, and I think I've had that presence in my life, but I've also been a friend in the darkness. I know that that's a role that comes naturally to me. So maybe that's why.
That's what you were for me.
Yeah, I remember. It was beautiful. Thanks for letting me do that.
Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting to hear you two speaking about that relationship to the sun. And I thought, I'm such a moon child. What's up with that?
I have a relationship with the moon too. I've always looked up at the sky at night to see where the moon is and what size it is. And astrologically, I'm a Cancer, so that's my planet. And I feel the moon, like I feel the difference between a full moon and a crescent moon. Month after month, I feel it, and I'm surprised that everybody doesn't feel it in a very tangible way. And Brendon and I have sort of come up with an impromptu ritual, or maybe ritual is not the right word, but around almost every full moon for several months now, we come.
I think it's a ritual.
Yeah, we come together and we set intentions. And my understanding is that a full moon is a great time to release things. And I've learned also in life that if we are everything, that everything we desire, everything we want, or everything that's good, that's meant for us, is already here. It's just sort of tuning into that frequency. And so intention and prayer is not as much about creating a situation, a favorable situation, as letting go of things that allow us to rise into the situations that we want. And for some reason, to receive. And for some reason, full moon energy seems to be a great time for releasing. So, month after month, we come together and there's something, some aspect of self that has explored the darkness enough and is ready to be shed. And I offer that and I say, God, we're under a full moon. Let me release this and let me let me rise up into a more frequency that is more aligned with what I prefer to experience.
Well, and there's a lot that happens in the dark, and I mean that metaphorically and literally. The creative works in mysterious ways. I think the anxious human in us wants to know, it's like we want to know what's going to happen and why, did this deal not go through, or why did this person disappoint me? And a lot of times as we get older, it's the beauty of our bodies getting older, is that we realize, oh, isn't it great that that disappointment happened? But in the moment, we don't see the inner workings, the machinations, the matrix. And I think that's what I love about the idea of being under the soil and the root system and the nutrients. It's because there's also this beautiful world of regeneration going on in the darkness. So the darkness isn't necessarily an absence, and it's not all scary. I think it's just, that's kind of a bit of a, maybe it's philosophical, I'm not sure, but I'm not afraid of the dark, I guess.
No mud, no lotus.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah, it's true.
I've heard somebody describe it as a tree, and you think about the roots that dig into the earth, and they're in the darkness, and it's going into the darkness where you're grounded and discover who you really are. It's the roots digging into the earth and sucking up nutrients and becoming more of who it's supposed to be, meant to be. That's also an aspect of the darkness.
Can I go back a little bit? There was a few things you said, Ali, that I had just wanted to bring up again, or had a question about being young, or your upbringing, and this idea of, as young as you were, or I think the same thing happened with Brendon and I as well. It's just kind of knowing in your bones that, like, no, that's not right. There's some tenet or some doctrine that, you were being demonstrated. I think it's really interesting, this idea of that strong force, even as a child, of knowing, but maybe we don't feel empowered to do the inquiry, to ask a question. We might complain instead, because it's safer to say, well, I don't want to go to confession, in my case, that was one of the hot spots. But I wonder how that the young Ali, who felt that strong sense of, this is correct, this not so much, this not sure yet. How did that turn into kind of compassionate inquiry as an adult now, towards yourself, but also, you said you had a daughter. How do you interface with that childlike knowing and that childlike curiosity as a father and as a man in your 40s? How does that work for you now?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I remember I was standing outside a movie theater with my mom. I must have been 5 or 6, my daughter's age, Layla. And we were in New York City, and there were a lot of homeless people on the streets. And then, there was a homeless man lying on the sidewalk, and he had a cup and he was begging. And I asked my mom, like, why is he doing that? And she said, he's poor. He doesn't have, money, food. And I cried. I just immediately cried. And I'm like, wow, that's not right. And she saw me cry, and she cried, and it happened instantaneously. We were both just, and not sobbing. Just there was a depth of emotion there, and I would say that, to be right there with my daughter in her feelings, to just see her the way she is, and I'm trying to raise her similar to how you described growing up. We go hiking a lot. We go to the woods a lot. I'm convinced that nature can teach her things that I can't. Nature has a lot of wisdom. But when I think about passing on certain things, I don't think about stamping her with a religion, or, forcing her into one path or the other. I actually think about teaching her how to sit still, teaching her how to be grateful for her body, to spend time with her feet, with her ankles, with her knees. Like, this body has taken millions of years of evolution to get to this level of peak advancement in biology. We are very sophisticated beings and machines, and to always have a remembrance of that. And I heard a talk recently about the idea of reflection and frequency, and sort of resonating with what you want to be. And that's something that I would want to teach her. separate from religion, and I would use the metaphor that if I was looking into a mirror and I was waiting for my reflection to smile before I do, it's never going to happen. I have to smile first. And I look forward to the day when she's old enough that I can stand her in front of the mirror and I'll say, you smile first. Like fill your heart
That's beautiful.
with what you want to see externally, and it will
Mhm.
be that way. And that's a lesson that to me is more valuable than Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark and all this theology that is hard to apply to our personal lives. I mean, and I honor those stories. I think they're important. I think they're beautiful. I think maybe humanity doesn't fully understand what those stories are. But I grew up in the Middle East where we're dogmatic and where we do things this way because we've always done them this way without a second thought as to why. And so, I think my daughter is the teacher, is her own best teacher. She just has to look within.
Bravo, Papa.
Yeah. It
Lucky girl.
reminds me of one of Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings that your smile can be the cause of or sometimes your happiness is the cause of your smile, and also your smile can be the cause of your happiness.
Yeah. Speaking of Thich Nhat Hanh and that childlike quality that it sounds like, Lee, you're supporting your daughter and recognizing in the moment, while she's in it, instead of this thing that you think you lost or that you look back on. You asked me earlier about rituals and practices, and one that I use with myself at home, but I also use in the classroom, and I've done it for entire staff of academies and high schools as well before exams or challenging situations in the institution. As I use the inner child meditation, and I ask everyone to bring a photo of themselves. Objects and visualization work really well for me, like the candle as well with Brendon. Very tactile. I'm trained as a visual artist, so my sense of perception and the tactile nature of things is really, really acute for me. But there's something about the languaging as well, like you said, smiling first in the mirror. When everyone has a photo of themselves usually I ask them between the age of maybe like 4 and 8, and a full photograph so you can see the face, and everyone just weeps because the compassion that comes so automatically from seeing this child that maybe some people haven't been so nice to, that maybe they've been cruel to themselves. I say, can you look at that little kid and be like, you little, like, can you really just be mean to that kid? I know there are always exceptions, but generally speaking, even if it's someone who causes strife. So if I have an individual in my orbit who is challenging, I will, if I can, get a child photo of them, and they go in the little circle around the candle. And I thank that child in the morning. And it certainly softens the edges, on bad human behavior, rough behavior, because you just remember that something happened along the way here to kind of dampen this light. But that's one of those rituals I use a lot. And I use it even though it may seem unconventional, whether it's in an art classroom or with a bunch of physics students getting ready for an exam. I don't really care. I will do that activity. And it's a great equalizer, compassion, and reconnecting with that childlike innocence and knowing. So I just thought I'd share that. Thank you for making me think of it, Brendon, because Thich Nhat Hanh, it's been used, for millennia, but he has some particularly beautiful guides, on YouTube where people can look up if they want to look at a really simple way to do an inner child meditation. But I really recommend the photograph. It keeps your eyes open, keeps you in the room.
Yeah, I love that. I think we tend to be very hard on ourselves in modern society. And if you think of yourself as a child, you wouldn't think or say the things that you think and say to yourself to that child, and it becomes very evident. It's like, I failed and I did this and I did that and I shouldn't and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, say that to your 5-year-old self. And you're like, I would never say that to another human being, let alone a child, and it puts it into perspective. And I think a lot of us were taught to gaslight ourselves, like you should be grateful. And I have to give my wife credit. She has a line that she uses with our daughter all the time. All your feelings are okay. Even the undesirable ones. You could be upset, you could be angry, you could be jealous. You have to see it for what it's worth, and that feeling exists in us for a reason. The universe put that feeling in us for a reason. It serves a purpose. I don't think that we need to live in a negative emotion for our whole life, but if we don't acknowledge it, we can never address it. And so all your feelings is okay is a ritual that we have that speaks to that.
That's really great. I think I was taught when I was your daughter's age and beyond for a bit to try to expel anger, sadness, grief, depression, those ones in particular. And that's where the bulk of my spiritual work and also my therapeutic work, psychoanalysis, and there's a lot of modalities that I use to become more integrated. But it's actually sitting with powerful emotions like grief and not having to wear it like a cloak and not having to get sucked into it, but being able to say, oh, what's the lesson here? What do I have to learn from this? Again, it's like imagine little Laurie on the hillside in Boxford lifting up a huge rock and there's all these nasty little crawly worms and bugs. This is why Brendon and I were such good friends back in the day. Because I just but that's for me, it was like, whoa, what is this? But you can have that same kind of excitement and curiosity. It may sound contradictory to some folks about the darkness too. And I know I've mentioned this a few times in this conversation. I mean, it's pertinent, at the moment for me. But I've learned in the last 5 years, I would say, I've learned so much from unmetabolized grief, anger, and sadness, and because I'm trying not to somatize it. Right? I don't want my body to be the assessor of all my emotions, right? With kind of a talking head and then the body being separate. So this is just kind of a personal project phase that I'm in at the moment, is really taking especially good care of my body and expelling all these old things that have been stored physiologically on the inside because I hadn't really metabolized things yet. So being able to teach our children to like feel all the feelings, we are full creatures. There's a sun and there's a moon, we're cyclical. It's so important because then when there is an opportunity for sadness or grief or other kinds of loss, it doesn't feel like the world is ending. It doesn't have to always feel like that. It feels like, oof, this is rough. And you can be accompanied, you can accompany someone else, but you can also know that nothing's permanent. And what can you learn from the prickly stuff and the dark stuff? And, there's always something growing.
We can smile at our sadness.
Yeah. And that release is important. And that's why I'm encouraged to hear you speak about how you parent your child, because that acceptance that it's like, no, all of you is good. All of you is loved.
Yeah. And we created her, but she doesn't belong to me. She belongs to the world, and I want her to be free, just very free to be who she wants to be, and who she is, without having to mold herself for parental, societal expectations that were never meant to be imposed on her, and that matters a lot to me, for her to be free.
Is she a character in your book? One of your books?
No, not yet. But I have female protagonists, and so I think maybe that's having a daughter has inspired me to write female protagonists more. I'm sure she's going to show up in the books at some point. She's a character, so she's going to show up in one of the books.
But she's dedicated to or one of the books is dedicated to her.
Yeah, you have a parenting, but well, it's not exactly a parenting book, but what was the title of your book? An
Eccentric Father's Guide to Everything.
Yes. Yeah.
That is written.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
I need to get a copy.
Yeah, you do. It's a good book.
Yeah.
I'll send you a copy.
I hope, I've got a 20-year-old, so I'm in a different kind of like stage, but she chose me. I met my daughter 5 years before she was born in a meditation.
Wow.
In a Kundalini class. Yeah, I mean, in perfect likeness. Just she's in a mode in her life right now where she's like, what are you talking about, Mom? But no, and I just keep thanking her for being such a teacher, you know. I mean, it's a pretty incredible responsibility, but it's an honor.
I feel like we should have you on again to talk a little bit about more about that, and also about your artwork, because we haven't really gotten into the specifics of just Laurie's art, you know, and I think it'd be nice to have you on again.
Yeah, well, anytime. I love talking. I love sharing, and I'm always happy to talk about making things. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to have you on again too, Laurie.
Yeah, cool.
For our listeners, if we end here, where can they find you? If somebody has been inspired by something that you said, or they want to work with you.
Okay, well, at this very moment in time, so December 2024, if you put my full name, Laurie Ann Pearsall, you can find Laurie Pearsall Artist on Instagram. I have a website. The name of my website is also the name of my business, which is launching in early 2025. It's kind of a more formal introduction of my integrated teaching and creative coaching that I'm doing, and it's called The Auto Ephemera Way. And yes, it's a peculiar name, but it was born out of a peculiar moment, and it came to me, and it's the name, regardless of what my graphic designer or the trademark registry people say, that's the name. So auto ephemera is kind of the self, but it also implies autonomy and automatism. And ephemera is that which is fleeting and impermanent. So, which is our experience, our lives on this earth, but also the physical ephemera. So everything I make is a recycling of something that has gone before. So all of my artwork is made out of journal pages, objects, things I've collected, family heirlooms. Yeah, you can see more of what I'm talking about when you look at it. But it's also, for the coaching program, it means that you already have everything you need, which you said earlier, Ali, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, that everything is impermanent, and we're our own teachers, and we have all of the things that we already need. So all we have to do is to look within and share without. So the Auto Ephemera Way is coming soon on Instagram, but my website is called that. So if you just look up Laurie Ann Pearsall, I'm very Googleable. I understood SEO a few years back to make sure that I'd be able to be of service to as many people as possible eventually when this project was born. So
Thank you. And I'll make sure to share your links when we post this episode as well.
thanks. Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Laurie. It was so nice having you on today.
Thanks. And bona nit or buenas noches from Mallorca. It's nice and dark out here. It's nice to be on to speak to you guys and see the sunlight coming in through your window still. So it's nice to connect across continents.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So
thanks. My pleasure. Thank you, Ellie, too.
And we'll talk to you on the next one.
Okay. Fantastic. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.